So I see my work as like a tour guide, as like a farmer, like planting seeds. So I'm planting seeds to grow a forest. Like I'm not planting it for my own harvest. So in that way, it's really about the perception of everyone as seeds of ideas, seeds of action that will one day sprout. Not everyone seeds like sprouts immediately, but my dream is, for every seed that I plant, one day, perhaps someone in a corporation or someone in a place of position of power will be inspired by what they've heard on the tour from someone who has attended the tour, and with that traction, things will change. Yeah, so that's always like the once again the groundswell that's required before change happens. And for me, that's where I see my work as a small function of that. And we have seen how the different seeds that have germinated, even across just the 7 years that we've been doing this, how they have been relevant to either advocacy for migrant worker issues or many others who have gone on to find a career in social work, in the very interesting jobs and careers in big corporations, right, that are involved in solving these problems. So I think I'm always happy to have like-minded people who come on the tours and leave inspired and eventually go on, a career doing what they are passionate about. And that always gives me hope. So I guess my role is just to be an example of someone who can like do this full time and has the privilege of being like not dying in COVID with like financial insolvency, right? With not being able to do tours for 6 months and having zero finances for that period of time. And I think it is a place of privilege, and also retrospectively like being really appreciative of this journey and still being able to sit here and say that I'm still running the business right now. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to the next generation, and how will you encourage them to continue to fight for a sustainable future or to even pursue a social entrepreneurship like you did?
So I think to the people who are still in school, like who have the privilege of like education and still like are able to volunteer because it's compulsory for your school, or because in some component in your grades you're marked for that. But I appreciate that how a lot of younger students are reaching out to like say that they want to do a project on like the work that I am involved in, and whether they can interview or help the initiative, to further the cause. And my advice to young people is really to expose yourselves to different volunteers, different volunteer organizations and different social issues. And being in school is really the best time to experiment, not just with like what you're going to do for a living, but I think the concern is, what are you going to live for? Like, what is your passion? What are you, why do you exist? Or the hard questions of what do you care about, and how do you, do that full time? And I think that's always the challenge that I give to people who approach, after you leave, the initiative will disappear because it was a school project. So how do you, challenging that notion, how do you sustain that, whether by continuing the good work that someone else has done, or continue building a resource upon which organizations or other people can take it. And it's really a great time to be exploring your passions and your interests and see what kind of career options that might bring. I think a good thing about the current state is that we do have quite a few jobs, for example, the green sector, or jobs in MNCs which are concerned by social responsibility and the triple bottom line, as they call it, right? So those are great areas to be exploring, especially when one is in school. I think the other thing is not being afraid to fail, especially when you're younger. I think for most of us, we are very concerned about like plans and how they must go according to a plan and a fruition, and some outcomes and objectives must be achieved in that process. If not, you will be considered failing at that project, right? So I think sometimes in our obsession for grades or what people might have the impression of, to a young person, it could be very impeding or degrading if you were graded badly or someone criticizes you about your idea. But rest assured that was exactly what I went through when I thought of doing tours in Geylang. People were just not the most receptive, especially when it's ideas that are not tested before. And I think what I really liked about that process of feedback was in how it really either helps you realize how spectacular your idea you think it is, that no one else agrees with it, and yet you think it's a damn good idea. Or I think it challenges you to really think about what you truly stand for in the idea that you're expressing, and that honing of that convincing others that it's a good idea kind of thing really hones your idea, and the kind of feedback that you get really helps make your idea into action and in a realistic way as well. So I really appreciated that process in meeting people who had feedback that was not so good about the ideas that I had. And I guess that's where I am today, right? With collective feedback and process of people who then validate you by joining your cause and support you as well along the way. And I think at some point of time, the realization was that whatever that we're doing is beyond me. It's a platform, and I think that's what young people can also think about. What kind of platforms do they want to create, or do they have on their own? Whether it's through social media, which is a great tool for sharing with your peers about what you care about, or the voice of the next generation that could be virtually communicated, or through ideas, or through subcultures and deeper ways that you speak to one another these days, apart from face to face. So I think these are always exciting avenues that I'm always getting ideas when I speak to youths and young people about. And I think the encouragement is not to let that fire fizzle out in corporate world when you graduate.